So, you know, this thing is supposed to be titled The Last Lecture, right? Which is a really alarming way. You know, I just kind of imagine, you know, a wheelchair and an oxygen tank and maybe a little IV drip. And, you know, ironically, I'm not talking about any of this stuff up here. This was like wallpaper. But this is all stuff that I make and have made pretty recently. Some of these paintings are barely dry. So I decided for my last lecture to just reflect on some things. So I've got 6 short chapters of quick reflections. And I wasn't imagining all of you guys sitting here. I was kind of imagining, you know, parents of students and, yeah, well, you're a parent. All right, how many of you here have actually fathered children or sired children? Been, you know, what? All right, so women, I'm including women in this, not fathering them, but yes, well. Okay, so imagine that you're the parent of a student or one of our distinguished faculty members or the dean of the school. Chapter 1, growing up. From the time when I was a kid, back before humankind walked upright, I wanted to be liked and to fit in. But I couldn't do it with sports even though I tried. I was a decent baseball player, but around the time I was in 6th grade, my coach and the coach of our competing team that day got into a fist fight at home plate over some play that had gone badly. I was really shaken up by the sounds of the men hitting each other and the bloody noses and the shouting. It was the beginning of the end of my interest in sporting life, as unsporting as it turned out to be. Plus, I was tall and terribly skinny, and about 6% of my total body weight was in my ears. And in fact, at that stage of my life, they grew like mysteriously straight out from my head, and somehow I grew into them later on. So I really looked a lot like Dumbo. So gradually I began to migrate to my other love, which was making things. I think my love affair with art started with art supplies. When we would go to the Woolworth store on a family shopping outing, I'd head to the section where the pencils and those little sharpeners are. You know, the ones that they have 2 holes, you know, and you can either sharpen like a long point or the short sort of what I think of as the golfing point, you know. So I love the smell of the wood shavings and the graphite. And I love the unlined pads of drawing paper, and especially the India ink with those little wooden holders you could get, and you could shove different nibs in them to make a wide or a narrow line. In the summers, you could go back to your elementary school, and there would be people there from Parks and Recreation who would coordinate daily activities to keep us engaged, and that included art. It was right around this time that I was introduced to copper repoussé, and I can recall doing a fairly large image from the myth about Jason and the Argonauts. At that time, I was in love with mythology and read a lot of it. And what I remember is the summer instructors coming around to watch me work on that piece of copper and bringing others by to see. It was the first time I can recall that anyone outside of family admired something that I did. It made me feel good. And it was based on my individuality, not necessarily on my fitting in. Chapter 2, nuance. Over time, as I grew in experience and had the benefits of education, I began to see that my exposure to art caused other kinds of differentiation. I noticed that my appetite for new ideas or experimentation was sometimes outside the norm. Friends or acquaintances that really wanted or needed things to always stay the same, perhaps because of the comfort that routine and sameness offers, didn't feel nearly as comfortable with the kinds of changes and risk-taking that one does in the studio, or that one encounters with art forms that are new, challenging, and unexpected. I became convinced that my exposure to art and ideas of people from whom I differed greatly could teach me new things. Some of my friends at the time didn't really want to deal with new things. They wanted them to stay as they were. And some of those people even started to become a little judgmental of stuff that was unfamiliar or somehow connected to people or cultures different from their own. And I began to really appreciate how much my appetite for art was shaping me as a person. The love of art can be triggered by many different kinds of experiences. There's a kind of alchemy in the smearing of pigments or graphite around on a flat surface and creating thereby an image that in our eyes and minds has the illusion of space and recognizable form. The craft of making, when done particularly well, has its own power. Then there's the power of ideas that certain work has, which a power that can actually force us to confront our beliefs or compare our own experiences to those that the artist places before us. This can be transcendent or humbling or hilarious, and certainly memorable. Art can also be mystifying, annoying, unclear, or deviously provocative. It can be a window that permits us a glimpse of some larger truth, or a mirror that throws our own humanity, or lack of it, back at us. Chapter 3, Visual Literacy. An interest in art leads to its further study and the eventual amplification of one's skill at decoding the messages embedded in visual things. After a while, especially in the present era when we are bombarded with images at every turn, this becomes a highly valuable and somewhat under-recognized commodity, the ability to be visually literate. Visual literacy involves awareness of the underlying messages that are embedded in images and includes, but is not limited to, intertwining cultural or historical denotations, connotations, metaphor, subtext, and so on. Simply said, the visually literate person can read the meanings of complex pictures, videos, objects, and other human-made expressions to a degree that others cannot. Why should you care? Remember, your parents. Because the worlds of advertising, merchandising, politics, and even governments can and do use the power of visual communications to try to get us to behave in certain ways. They make us want to buy things, or make us be attracted to a musician or a film star. It says start, I meant star. They can also lead us to dislike a candidate for office or a person who looks different from us. Many of you are too young to remember the Marlboro Man. Actually, in this group, I think only your kids are probably too young to remember the Marlboro Man. But cigarette companies who employed images of handsome, rugged, and need I say, smoking cowboys in the great American West used these images to sell their products, and they were really selling the values of rugged individualism which are embedded in our national psyche. They used visual communication to link cigarette consumption with macho independence and natural beauty. And you know how dangerous that is. You also know that the tobacco companies made a killing. It turned out that that killing was both literal and figurative, and still is. The upshot is that I believe that whether you're a maker or a looker, by which I mean to say an artist, designer, or a consumer, you're well served to be alert not only to the information that an image or an object offers you at first glance, but then to be both able and willing to decipher what it's really saying, and even better, being familiar with its historical antecedents. Chapter 4, Professional plus Personal. During my time in college in the early 1970s, I probably gave insufficient thought to how I was going to make a living after I got my BFA degree. While I was there, I just kept taking courses that interested the hell out of me and that I hoped would somehow prepare me for a life that I hoped someday to live. Besides all the painting, photography, sculpture, and art history courses, and in addition to the seminar I spent, semester I spent in New York City as the studio assistant to a well-known painter there, the best thing I did was to take a ton of literature, psychology, and religion courses. I developed the ability to write well and express myself verbally. I learned what makes people tick and how religions developed over time, including how the political climate, turf battles, and economies that were working at the time the world's major religions were forming influenced the beliefs and writings that have come down through the ages as the Bible and the Quran. As I say, these studies sharpened my communication skills and my empathy. I learned to see things through the eyes of others. I learned to doubt that there's a single right way of looking at things. In short, I learned the stuff I needed to succeed in my life and in my work here at CCAD. Perhaps the best thing has been that my personal life and my professional life have become one thing. There's very little separation between the friendships and relationships that I enjoy through the college. For 15 and a half years, I've lived and breathed CCAD, and it is the one CEO level job that I can think of where being an artist is truly an asset and not a liability. It's a great blessing, and for me, this seamless blending of work life and life has been a splendid thing. chapter 5. As you can tell, there are only 6 chapters. This is not going to be a 45-minute talk. Isn't that great? Don't you just love it when it's short? It's good, yeah. Change. As many of you are no doubt aware, I'm making a big change in this life of mine. Not long ago, I announced my intention to retire from this glorious job at the end of the coming academic year, which will occur on or about June 30th, 2014. I want to share some of my thinking about this, as I think somehow I owe all of you an explanation. First, several folksy homilies about change. First, we've all heard the one that change is good. And also that the only constant is change. This one seems a little closer to the truth, which is change is good so long as it's happening to someone else. And the one I like the most, which is a quote by a Buddhist writer-philosopher named Alan Watts, the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. So, come July of 2014, I will conclude 40 years of continuous labor on behalf of others to turn my attention to my personal life and my studio life. For you to understand how hard it was for me to decide this, you must know that first that I'm a people person and a people pleaser. I love to find ways for things to be harmonious, and I always seek win-win outcomes with the goal of making everyone happy. I love the company of people, and I hate like hell to disappoint them. Yet nearly after 2 years of soul searching, I couldn't figure out a way to turn to the other side of my life, which would be to go and have fun with my lovely wife, to travel, and to plunge full-time into the studio to make my own work. Finally, this was a big change for me. I reasoned that the only way I could do this was to make a decision that is inherently selfish and that might disappoint others. But as Alan Watts said, I plunged in, I'm moving with it, and will soon join in a new dance. There are other factors too. 16 years in a presidency is a good run. The national average is for a college or university president 5 years. I wanted to leave before I ran out of gas, which can happen in a job that often has one night out on the circuit, or has one out on the circuit 6 nights a week for years on end. And importantly, CCAD needs to begin the preparations and execution of its next major fundraising campaign. To go out and raise $20 million, which I think we should do, takes a couple of years of planning and research, a couple of years of the so-called quiet phase to line up the lead gifts, and several more to wrap up the public phase. I felt that I couldn't commit to another 7 or 8 years here and owed it to CCAD to leave now, to leave now and not allow time for a new president to come in, get settled, and to see a campaign through, basically. So as unsettling as change can be, even for the change we create for ourselves, I knew in my heart that this had to be done now. The college is strong, has a progressive and forward-looking strategic plan, and they're all the right people on board to see us further along on the path to greatness. Chapter 6, last chapter, things I believe in. Experiences I had in the world of art museums and as an artist in residence in Portsmouth, Ohio in the mid-70s confirmed my conviction that I hold to this day, that art's a bridge to human understanding, and that more than providing simple adornment, it can quite literally alter our culture and change lives for the better. I became a secular evangelist for the power of art and design to shape our world in ways that counteract the ugliness or even terror that occurs. Art and mentors, friends and life experiences, and education, of course education, all weave together to equip us to observe, critique, and respond to the world around us. For me, the arts, including great works of literature, music, art, design, and architecture, have been the embodiment of what the pursuit of human excellence is all about, in much the same way as sports or sacred pursuits are for others. I believe in the power of giving. I love the connection that is forged between me and a cause or organization when I contribute my time, my money, or even a work of art to advance its mission. I love helping others discover the delight of connecting to CCAD and our mission. It thrills me to no end to find some enlightened, inquisitive soul who feels the rush of philanthropic joy by giving a meaningful and hopefully sizable contribution to CCAD, as we learned yesterday with this $250,000 gift that LB managed to pull down for us from our friends at Tween. Now again, I assume there would be a lot of parents and families here, so I wrote in here, which reminds me to inquire if any of you today would care to name a building. Endow a program chair, or put a little money toward a scholarship to help a talented student whose financial situation has unexpectedly changed. Help them stay in school and finish their degree. I believe that Columbus is at an incredible tipping point. Our community is robust, growing, increasingly hip, and better poised than ever to take great risks and to reap great rewards. I believe in the Discovery District neighborhood, and I'm thrilled that there's so much collateral development going on here now. I believe that this will be one of the hottest neighborhoods in the city, and happily CCAD is at its epicenter. I believe that CCAD is at a tipping point as well. We're a powerful, effective, and very distinctive enterprise. We launch people into the lives that they dream of living. Our people are the stem cells for the creative economy. Unlike most of our peers, we recognize the power of art and design with a healthy dose of business education is the recipe for long-term student success. And I believe in the coming years, CCAD's reputation will rocket even higher. I believe in chocolate, I believe in Chardonnay, and I believe in sushi. I believe that travel is one of the richest ways to learn. I believe in naps. God, I believe in naps. Unlike the dyslexic atheist who doesn't believe in dog, I do. I believe it's time for me to stop talking, and I thank you for your kind attention.